Today's video is going to be on the warrior mindset, why you need to adopt this if you don't have it already, and how it's going to add a tremendous value in your life. Now, this warrior mindset that I call it is something that I adopted at 23 years old, and it was essentially something that I developed out of necessity. I was so goddamn broken down and really coming off of so many addictions, low points, pretty much rock bottom, where I just needed something to survive. And I essentially rebuilt myself with this warrior mindset. Now, when I call it the warrior mindset, not only is it related to building up literally a physique and strength in the gym or in some sort of, physical sense, because that's super important, but it's also the mindset where you want to essentially go towards what is hard and stop taking the easiest route. You hear me say all the time that your body and your mind and your brain want to go with that path of least resistance. Your body wants to do what's easiest. It wants to expend the least amount of energy possible, and that is the complete opposite of what we want to do in the warrior mindset. Now, and you can see here me recording in the let's put it over here. So as we go towards what's harder, we're building our prefrontal cortex, our brain. We're building that willpower, that discipline and determination, that skill set. It's literally a skill set that you have to build. Again, your default is the path of least resistance. Your default is doing whatever is easiest. And it takes a while to kind of rebuild yourself, but you might as well start now. You might as well making those little baby steps or chiseling away at this each day and realize that you'll build momentum. Each day that you stick to it, your brain will get a little bit stronger. You'll get a little bit more willpower. You'll get a little bit more skills. You'll get a little bit better in the gym. And you do this day after day after day, and you will start seeing just tremendous payouts. So that's really the whole idea behind the warrior mindset, is both building yourself physically as well as mentally and going towards what is stronger, and realizing that, whatever you do in your life is going to take work. Now, you can take the easy route, and that's fine. And I realize that probably 90% of the population is going to always stick with that easy route. And that's totally fine. As long as you're happy doing that, by all means. But if you want to join my team and my tribe and you want to cultivate that warrior mindset, that's something I'm going to be going a lot more towards. Now, it gets a little bit more complicated because what I often see is when guys are younger, in that age range of, just throw it out roughly, 18 to maybe 26, 27, into their late 20s, they really need this warrior mindset. Now, the problem is that when you stay in the warrior mindset for too long, you become so rigid in the kind of competitiveness, because ultimately the warrior mindset to me is rooted in more competitiveness. And we know that ultimately you want to go into collaboration. So that's the biggest thing. And I've talked about this before, but what happened for me was that I stayed in the warrior mindset for too long. I stayed in it probably about 2 years too long, and I didn't transition out. Now, of course, the analogy when you transition out is you ever see the Russian dolls? There's a small one that's stacked inside a smaller one and stacked inside a medium one, and they get bigger and you're stacking it. When I talk about transitioning, that's kind of the idea, is that you're always going to have still that smaller doll. You're always going to still have that self, right? But now you've added another layer to it. And when I need it, I draw back on that warrior mindset. But it's not like my default state now. But for a long time, it was my default, and that's what you need for a long period of time. And but eventually realize that that's not the end. That's not the end kind of path. You're going to transition on other paths as you keep on going. So I just want to throw in there as a super important point, because it is something that I ran into hard, and I really burned myself out because I was so competitive, and I looked at everyone as competition. Even people walking down the street, I would always be, big into bodybuilding, and I'd be sizing them up like, oh, I could take this person in a fight. And in many ways, that adds a lot of confidence, like knowing that you can hold your own when you're walking down the street, especially guys that if you live in like rougher parts of the world or rougher neighborhoods, it's super empowering to know that you can walk down the street and hold your own on any fight. But ultimately, it gets destructive when you get to the point where you're like actively like staring people down, and you just get so rigid in that competitiveness, and that's not what you want. You want it to be this expansive collaborativeness, but just know in the back of your mind, right, that you're a boss and that you can hold your own. And so it's really figuring out how to balance the two together, between being both a warrior but also being a leader and a collaborator. And ultimately, and eventually I'm going to have a program out where I want to incorporate the warrior and the collaborator and the leader, and other areas of these, or other dolls, I should say, within this. I think they're called like majuskas. Is that what? Someone write in the comments what the Russian dolls are called. I think it's majuskas. I'm not sure. But ultimately, I want to have a whole program where it talks about how to transition different stages in your life and kind of grow, and what I call the mature masculine, and really put together like an extensive program on that. I'm not exactly sure how I would do it, but I know it's something that I've wanted to do for a while, and something that I'm really super interested in. And it's so important nowadays because you see so many people derped out with social media, and also with COVID, man. Like, no one really knows, like, what are people doing, man? I'm just afraid that you're going to have this entire civilization that just becomes like sucked into the matrix. So like, this stuff is super important. Coming out of 2020, it's been a strange year. We're going to have a massive rebuilding. And throughout history, you look at a lot of times when nations or the world has rebuilt itself, it does come from a major tragedy or some sort of war or famine or plague, whatever you may have it. And that's something to use as momentum moving forward, I think, into 2021 and forward. So anyway, that's about a wrap on that topic. The warrior mindset, it's super important. Remember, in essence, it's going towards what's harder, and that's what's going to grow you ultimately in the end. Train both your physicality, right, growing stronger, as well as growing your brain and your willpower, and just become a strong-ass warrior. But remember, it's not the end result, but it's part of the mature masculine journey. Hope that video was informative. Again, drop me any sort of suggestions that you want to see, and I will make a video on it. And that's a wrap. I'm out.